These comments will be for the Cirone etude, number 24, that you need to play in option 1. I would highly recommend purchasing the Study Guidebook. This is the white covered book, not the red one, because the composer has offered a full page of interpretation and observations for this very etude. In fact, I think you can actually go to Mr. Cirone's website and purchase a full tutorial by him if you are interested. If you just rely on the little comments available to you in the red book, you're really missing out on a lot of the comments from the actual composer, which I think is very valuable. So I highly recommend purchasing the study guide version of this book. We're going to start right away talking about rolls. You'll notice in your audition materials packet that next to all the snare drum etudes, it always says buzz rolls. That's because the notation is a little bit different. It just looks similar in some ways to rudimental music, and we're really trying to make sure you guys know that even though it might look like 2 slashes, it's always 3 slashes. You'll notice in the very first measure, the first 2 rolls have 3 slashes. You'll also notice they don't have any sort of a beam at the top. They're quarter notes. They don't need a beam. But when you go to the 4th beat of that very first measure, all of a sudden you only see 2 slashes, but that's because there's a beam, and that beam counts as the 3rd slash. So all of the rolls have 3 slashes. They just kind of look different depending on what the actual rhythm is. So make sure, first off, all rolls in this etude are buzz or multiple bounce rolls. I think the tricky thing when it comes to the rolls is knowing what kind of a roll bass to play, and also whether to tie or not to tie some of the rolls. Let's talk about the roll bass first. The roll bass is the underlying rhythm underneath the roll. It always depends on 2 factors, your tempo and your current dynamic. My roll bass changes all over this page. I never will do the same roll bass for this etude. If I have an etude with the same dynamic and the same tempo, then I might do the same roll bass. It's not so in this etude. Let's look right away at measure 1. We have these loud with an accent quarter note rolls. They are untied because the composer really wants you to make a little bit of a separation between them, and there is no slur marking. I'm actually going to do what I think is a quick 5-lit so that it gives me a little bit of time to take a breath there. By beat 3, I'm going to play almost all of my 8th note rolls in this etude as a 16th note triplet. So it sounds like this. 1 and. You have the da-ga-da-da. The roll bass is 1 and. So I just buzz all of those triplets there. In measure 2, on beat 2, now I have to do a buzzed 16th note. So my duration is getting smaller and smaller. I'm actually going to do that buzz roll as a 32nd note, more of a duple feel. So measure 2, beat 2 sounds like this. Just a really quick 2 buzzes on that very first 16th note of beat 2. Let's look at another one. How about line 4? The dynamic level changes. I'm down to piano now, even though I have an 8th note roll, so I'm not actually going to do the 16th note triplet. I don't want to create that much noise. I need the dynamic to be softer, so I'm really just going to do 16th notes. Listen to how that will sound. So really just 2 strikes per roll to keep the dynamic down. Let's look at line 6. I have these rolls now that crescendo. I'm actually not doing a certain meter or a rhythm underneath those rolls because when I crescendo, I'm going to start at a softer speed and I'm going to actually get faster to help with that dynamic. So each one of those is just a little bit different. I think the fermata in line 6 is of consideration as well. Notice the fermata is on the roll, not on a grand pause after the roll. Go ahead and fermata the roll after you've crescendoed, but don't leave a big grand pause till you start the next phrase. You want to go right into the phrase. You can have a little bit of a breath mark, but consider it a breath mark versus a caesura or what we call railroad tracks sometimes. I think most of the other notes, you have measure 1, and you have the fermata, and then the next measure after the fermata. Those are about the only ones that we're not going to tie. All the other rolls are going to be tied to the next note after the roll. Let's talk about one other technical element, the drag figures. In this etude, you want your drag figures fairly closed. Now, when I say closed, I just mean squished together. I do not mean buzzed. Your drags are not buzzed. I still need to hear two little notes and one big note. You just want to squish them together as tight as you can. In the concert style, in the rudimental outdoor style, we open those up so they're really, really far apart from each other. In this concert style, you want to squish them together. One more final comment is about the rhythm. This is something that Cirone does a lot. Whenever you see a dotted 16th note followed by a 32nd, near 16th note triplets, he's testing you. He wants to know if you can keep that rhythm separate. Let me give you an example. Here are 16th note triplets. That was all some form of a triplet rhythm. Now, here's the dotted 32nds. Now, let me change them up a little bit and see if you can see what I'm doing. You really need to make sure you can distinguish between the triplet rhythm and the 32nd note rhythm. He has this in a ton of his etudes, and it's always a test to see if you're paying attention. Let me offer a couple comments regarding your musicality or musicianship. There are a lot of dynamics on this page, so make sure you play them. This is too easy a target for your judge's sheet if you don't play what's actually on the page. It's just way too easy to mark. More dynamics. So really make sure you're following what he wrote down. Phrasing, on the other hand, is not written in. That's the inflection that we get to offer to make it a unique performance to us or the individual performer. The main consideration I want you to look at with phrasing starts on line 8. We have a series of mixed meter just with straight 16th notes, no drags, no rolls, no accents. And I want to make sure you understand the composer intended for you to let the world know that there's mixed meter there. You are not supposed to play those as straight 16th notes. He says this in his comments. If you happen to have the study guide, you can double check me on it. What you want to do is make sure you play the 2/4 bar with the beaming in place. I say this a lot, but I want you to play the beaming, and that means to put an agogic accent or an implied accent, just a little one, at the beginning of each beam. So the 2/4 bar has a little accent on beat 1 and on beat 2. Then you have a 3/16 and a 2/16. All of those you need to make sure the downbeat has this little accent on it. I actually do a sticking that allows me to play this better. When the 3/16 starts, I stick it right, left, left, right, left, left. So it really helps me play the phrasing. Let me go ahead and play this for you, and you can see if you can hear the inflection in this otherwise very boring 16th note passage. That way it gives it just a little bit of a dance versus being totally even there. My last comment to you will be in regards to the fermatas. There are only 2 of them. I mentioned earlier in the middle of the sections, there's that fermata where you don't want to have a huge break. In the last fermata on the end of the page, just make sure you hold it out a little longer than a 1/4 note, maybe like a 1/2 note. Doesn't have to be a whole note concept, although that probably wouldn't be wrong as you don't have a lot of indication there. But I'd recommend holding it out maybe 1 additional beat.